that they want to put you in prison for life when it was at public places. I mean, this, and you told them you were taping them. I welcome this type of abuse because it's really going to illustrate how out of control this system is. It's only when the thugs think they've got us that they really tip their hand. Do you agree, Michael, that they're starting to tip their hand?
I do. I think that they way overreached, and that the fact that they were in the mindset of pure retaliation clouded their judgment to the point where they way overreached and set this whole thing up. And because it's a set-up scam and it's all bogus and there's nothing legitimate about it, they are bound to lose.
Well, I know in a lot of areas the wreckers are always the brother or the cousin of the judge or the police chief, and you were telling me it's basically the same story. How many cars are they snatching out of people's backyards or driveways?
Since this has been in place for years, it could be thousands. And like in my case, that took place in Bridgeport, they took my 2 valuable cars, and they did it under the ordinance, under the authority of the ordinance, and they left my car that would be considered by them to be junk. They left it behind. It was the one that didn't run, had been wrecked, and so they're using it to steal.
Wow.
The most valuable cars.
And so you started standing up to them in court and started interviewing them and recording them and outside of court and other areas, and they just said, that's it, buddy, you're going to prison for life. Well, I think the fact that they took the running cars is a big illustration of what we're dealing with. Now, in closing, when's the next court date coming up?
The last court date that I had was on the August 18th date. The judge said that he was going to read and reread the documents that had been submitted, and left the the next court date open-ended. I actually don't have a court date yet. And
so imagine a judge going, gee, I wonder if you can tape police in public. Duh. I wonder if we've got any freedom in America where we got to pay Al Gore to breathe. And I want to tie this in with the last guest and the next guest that's coming up, Sheriff Richard Mack, a true patriot, a true peace officer, with you, Michael Allison. We had an advice columnist on who said that the TSA went through her clothing into her vagina. And I've actually seen this on the news, the video of it with other women. I've seen it myself with men. They go into the butt crack and press the pants into the anus. That's in Jesse Ventura's lawsuit. I mean, he will not fly. He's in private seething with anger. I mean, he was like Yosemite Sam after I watched it happen to him. He was calm when it happened, but once he got through, he was upset the whole evening. And I mean, is being traumatized. The pilots, a lot of them would throw up after this happened and refuse to fly. What is your view of this new power grab? And now the move, they're talking about suing the woman who dared talk about it.
Yeah, I have refused to step foot in an airport ever since all of this anti-American behavior started. And I refuse to subject myself to it, and any American shouldn't be forced to. And
what are you going to do when they're now doing it? Start setting up checkpoints, and you pull up to them with their 50 cal machine guns on mounts. The rest of it, they're going to go through all your goods. They're going to take blood out of your arm, and they may even put on the glove and go inside. They're now announcing that.
It sounds like it may be time for revolution. However, anybody might think that might be taken.
Can you imagine George Washington if he came back in a time machine and saw him like fondling women and small children and taking people's cars out of their yard and microwaving people and arresting Amish? What do you think George Washington would think?
I think the founding fathers would not even believe their eyes of what's going on with what they created.
Hell, Michael, I'm not a founding father, and I can't believe it, and I grew up in this crap. Hey, listen, God bless you. You're a great American. We're standing with you, and if folks want to contact us for a civil litigant lawyer in Indiana that you're nearby or the crime syndicate state of Illinois, we'll get them in touch with you. Michael, God bless you.
Thank you for having me on.
You bet, my friend. There goes Michael Allison, restoring the spirit of 1776. We're going to go to break and come back with the final segment of Infowars Nightly News with Sheriff Richard Mack, ladies and gentlemen. You'll definitely want to stay with us on this because I'm going to talk about Fast and Furious, the TSA groping gangs, and police arresting people for filming them and folks getting thrown in jail for it. This guy facing life in prison. We'll be right back. It's Infowars Nightly News.
Obama is notoriously a liar.
We need to go to where the real architecture of government is, and it's not in a president.
Wall Street has hijacked Washington in broad daylight.
Well, Obama's already fudging. He's fudged since day one in this election.
The elite are using Obama to pacify the public so they can usher in the North American Union by stealth, launch a new Cold War, and continue the occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan. The globalists are outside all the nations. That gives them safety, and they play countries off against each other.
We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see.
Partnership and cooperation among nations is not a choice. It is the only way.
What they're doing is using the existence of the United States to act out their Wall Street fantasies of world domination and maintaining their capital structures and maintaining their system of looting.
The fight that this country has been waging since its inception is for the central bankers not to take over the country.
President Barack Obama is only the tool of a larger agenda.
Senator Obama had a desire to do some meetings. Others had a desire to meet with him tonight in a private way, and that's what we're doing.
Presidential candidate Barack Obama was publicly criticizing the North American Free Trade Agreement in a bid for votes, but privately telling Canadian officials not to worry about it.
If you talk to our generals, they are desperate for is a civilian counterpart to our military force.
What do you call this thing where you get this false sense of gratification, but because a black man is in office, everything's gonna be all right? No, everything's not gonna be all right.
So I know how unpopular it is to be seen as helping banks right now, especially when everyone is suffering in part from their bad decisions. I promise you, I get it.
The Obama deception. The truth strikes back. Get your copy of The Obama Deception today at Infowars.com or download it in super high quality at prisonplanet.tv. It's Infowars Nightly News here Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, and then we restream the show when it ends until I go live on the radio the next day at 11 a.m. Central, and then, of course, we start restreaming again at 7 p.m. Central. So, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Coming up in a few minutes, we're going to be talking to Sheriff Mack, in fact, here in just one moment. But this whole Fast and Furious case, the corporate mainstream media is trying to get us to focus on little side issues, not the drugs being shipped in by the ATF, that's on record, not the guns being shipped all over the country to drug gangs to knock out their competition, that's being ignored. You know, I've interviewed Darryl Issa, I know Darryl Issa. I hope that he's the real deal on this, but you know, political parties like to protect each other. And the fact that they're busy talking about, oh, we're assigning new prosecutors because the Attorney General can't be trusted to go after people that they set up in Fast and Furious, that's all a distraction. That's all a diversion. This is really all about blaming the Second Amendment for the carnage in Mexico, which the White House is still going ahead with, even though they got caught launching this false flag against the Second Amendment. With more on this incredible case that could bring down Obama and his organized crime syndicate is veteran peace officer Sheriff Richard Mack. You know, he, back in the mid-1990s, took his Supreme Court case against the Brady Act, violating our Second Amendment, all the way to the Supreme Court and won. And it's a landmark case pointing out the true power of the 10th Amendment and the states. But I wanted to talk to him about Fast and Furious and some of the new developments there, and the fact that the Attorney General has been caught perjuring himself repeatedly, and where he thinks this is going. But first, we're going to cover a couple of other big police state issues. Sheriff, great to have you here with us.
Hey, thanks a lot, Alex. It's always good to be with you.
Do you ever feel like that you're living in some weird alternate dimension, because arresting Amish for selling, tomatoes and milk, kids being arrested for lemonade stands, Gibson Guitar told to leave the country, TSA going in the pants of people now, folks being charged and facing life in prison for videotaping and taping police in public. I mean, is our government trying to go beyond North Korea? Do they think they're God?
Yeah, it's basically come to that. And you failed to mention the other one. In Florida, the police are telling the news media they can no longer have scanners. So this all fits into the picture that you're drawing for your audience right now, that it's so out of control. It's everything to protect the government, and yet nothing to protect the Bill of Rights or the people. And this should be very alarming to everyone in America, not just Alex Jones listeners, but everyone in America should be getting on board, listening to your information, because this is now affecting the mainstream of America.
Sheriff, what do you think? I mean, you warned about this 15, 20 years ago. It's now all come true. I hope the next chapter doesn't come true. But Obama and FEMA are now calling it the federal family, I guess like La Cosa Nostra. And they're saying we've got to circle the wagons against the people. So they're almost taking that distorted thin blue line and now making it the federal family line.
Right. And there's a book that even brings that out called The Sovereign Individual, that was written by a couple of mainstreamers out of New York. It was actually published by Simon & Schuster. And it makes that very claim that you have, that the only thing closest to the Cosa Nostra or the mafia in America is our own federal government. And they even cite specifically the IRS. But it's gone. The IRS is not any longer the only one that gets to play the Gestapo. It's all of them now. And yes, it is Eric Holder. And it's amazing that Eric Holder would be now responsible to call for his own arrest.
It's incredible. Now, I want to get into Fast and Furious and the fact that it's a smokescreen. It's all of it. They're talking about, oh, they screwed up. It's now admitted that into states all over the country they were shipping guns. They weren't just shipping them into Honduras and Mexico, but we're going to get to that in a minute and why you think they did it and where you think it's going. But what about Mr. Allison facing life in prison for videotaping and audio taping police in public, and 12 states coming out and officially saying we're going to arrest you, including news media, if you tape us? I mean, there's no perception of privacy. How do the police videotape us?
The only time that we could not videotape a police officer is if he was in his own home. If he was off duty and in his own home. Every time that you're outside of your home, if you're in the public's eye, it doesn't matter if you're a cop, it doesn't matter if you're a barber on Main Street. If you're in public, I can videotape you. I can photograph you. I was just in El Salvador, a third world country, 2 weeks ago. My son is videotaping in this marketplace, and a police officer came up to him and told him he could no longer take any pictures in this public setting. Has the United States caught up to El Salvador, a third world country that doesn't have a constitution, that does not have a Bill of Rights? Where are we at in this country, Alex? I'm sorry. Any cop who thinks he cannot be photographed or videotaped while he's in uniform doing his supposed job, then he has turned in to the real enemy. Any chief of police who thinks that's okay in America should be fired and charged criminally for violating his oath of office to uphold and defend the Constitution.
Well, Sheriff Mack, how did it get to this where they openly come out, and now in 12 states, it was just 9 a few months ago, and are officially saying, we're coming after you. And they're even getting convictions. Most of them get thrown out because people know their rights, but poor people and folks, they're actually getting juries to send people to prison, and now they say, we want life in prison. I mean, even in North Korea, I don't think you get life in prison for videotaping. I mean, are they drinking or snorting some type of hallucinogen?
I think, though, you have to really look very closely at the entire Obama picture. This has been happening. We knew what he was when we picked him up.
No, he said in Missouri, it was on the news, if you criticized him, the police said we're going to arrest you during the campaign.
Yeah. Well, again, the American people, if indeed they did this, but it looks like it. I mean, he still gets flocks of people following after him, even now that he's been so destructive to America, so destructive to freedom, so destructive to our foundational documents and our foundational principles. He's still getting people to flock behind him like he's some sort of rock star. And I find that the scariest.